Hello, everyone. Greetings from Split, Croatia. I would like to thank the organizers for organizing such a great conference. Unfortunately, we are unable to see each other in vivo due to COVID-19 pandemics. But on the other hand, this situation increased our capacity and for online education, and it was building our skill for also video conferencing that we are going to face, for some time now. Um, this is my strong belief that there is great importance of sleep for healthy aging. And in my talk, I will put more impact on sleep disorder breathing. The outline of the talk is going to be like this: a couple words about the brain, how it controls sleep-wake cycle, and the two process model, process C being circadian rhythm and process S sleep homeostasis. Majority of my talk is going to be devoted to sleep and aging, and especially sleep breathing disorders and how it affects the aging. I will give you some data on the studies from the studies on the Croatian population, and my last minute is going to be devoted to sleep medicine in the EU and Croatia and the newest development in this area. Despite the fact that we are studying sleep for over 40, maybe 50, 60 years, mainly at the systemic level, but also in the last couple of years, more and more at the cellular and molecular level, sleep medicine is still not specialty in medicine. It is still called new discipline, and sleep diseases are new diseases. It is a little bit impressive that the 1/3 of our lives is spent in the time that we still do not possess enough knowledge about, and there are still many unanswered questions about this state. And not only that, but in sleep medicine, among sleep doctors, there is a great proportion of those who do not really possess enough knowledge on the neurobiology and neurophysiology of sleep. And those areas in sleep medicine textbook are the most boring ones. So I will try to make it simple, but I would like first to start with the examples. Some animals, like beluga dolphin, for example, have this ability to sleep with only one hemisphere at a time, and the other one is active, and then vice versa. The other one is falling asleep, and this one is waking up. So this animal is able to sleep all the time and to of course to perform whatever tasks it's having on its mind. On the other hand, rats and humans do not possess this difference between two hemispheres, so we sleep actually with both hemispheres at the same time. But however, the fact is, by using deep brain recordings technique, we actually see that some parts of the brain are asleep while other parts of the brain are very active. So the question of the role and its brain in the control of wakefulness and sleep, despite many new studies being performed and many new data coming out, this question is getting bigger the more we know about this regulation. The two-process model was introduced by Alex Borbeli and his colleagues in Switzerland, and it is composed of process C, meaning circadian rhythm, and process S, which stands for sleep-wake homeostasis. And I will just briefly give you a couple examples or say a couple words about both. Process C, or circadian rhythm, means that actually we have the biological clock in our brains, but it is not only human. Jean-Jacques Dorteau de Meren, a long time ago, centuries ago actually, showed this observation, this experiment where he was observing plants, and during the daylight exposure to sunshine, the plants' leaves were up, and during the night, they were folded. And he said, okay, what about putting this plant in the box, hidden from the daylight or nighttime? And what will happen to those leaves? And then he observed that the leaves would be up again during the daylight, and then during the night it would be folded. So his conclusion was that there is definitely some intrinsic mechanism that regulates the wakefulness and sleep even in this plant. What about human? The process C is regulated in our hypothalamus, deep structure of our brain, where there is a small nucleus called suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it's bilateral, so it's in both hemispheres. So we are talking about suprachiasmatic nuclei as the master circadian pacemaker, which means that this is mainly controlling our general state, but there are other organs, and all our organs actually, and most our cells and tissues do possess this clock mechanism. So it is important to obey this rhythm. In modern medicine, we see more and more diseases where this modern lifestyle is actually affecting different organs because we are not obeying this rhythm. The importance of process C can be illustrated best by the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine given in 2018 for three scientists, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young. For 2017, actually, this Nobel Prize was given for their discoveries of molecular mechanism controlling the circadian rhythm. Unfortunately, they did those studies on Drosophila melanogaster, or the fruit fly, and not humans. We can see here that some proteins in our body regulated by our genes go up during wakefulness and then go down during sleep, but they can actually be interfered by simple methods like pulse of the bright light, and immediately the proteins go down, and those proteins actually regulate the clock. So to sum it up, there is a clock, suprachiasmatic nucleus, there are certain proteins and the messages in certain genes that regulate this clock, and also some drugs or some neurohormones released from our own brains, actually, like melatonin, that regulate this clock, and also the exposure to bright light or Zeitgeber. From the outside, we get also some information that regulate our clock. What about disorders of timing? There is a normal sleep phase, but most humans actually do not behave like that. Especially youngsters behave more like this. They have delayed sleep phase, they have difficulty waking up, but they have also difficulty falling asleep in the evening. On the other hand, elderly mainly behave according to this advanced sleep phase syndrome. So they have difficulty staying awake in the evening, but they also do have early morning awakening. Unfortunately, the school system doesn't recognize the fact that, so our students say better 6 hours in school than not to sleep at all. There are, of course, disorders due to our social behavior. So, for example, when we cross the time zones and we travel from east to west or from west to east, we have jet lag. Jet lag is more pronounced when we travel eastbound. Process S, or sleep-wake homeostasis, what is that? We do have another part of the brain which is in close vicinity, it is still in hypothalamus, but this part of the brain is regulating sleep and wakefulness a little bit differently. It's got several neuronal groups. In the posterior hypothalamus, there are neurons that regulate wakefulness. So if you do the lesion in this part of the brain, the animal, like the cats, the experiments were mainly done in the cats, they have prolonged sleep-like state. On the other hand, if you do lesions in the preoptic area, then you markedly suppress sleep. So that means in that part of the brain, in the anterior hypothalamus, there is a sleep area. So hypothalamus is recognized to be the deep structure of the brain that strongly regulates sleep, having the clock, but also having neurons that are responsible either for wakefulness or for sleepiness. So you can see the activity of those neurons from deep inside the brain actually activate cortical layers and cortical neurons there, and they keep us awake. On the other hand, when this activation goes down, then we fall asleep. So you can see the difference between two situations, two states of mind, actually wakefulness and sleep, and the difference in those activities. To sum it up, the hypothalamus, anterior part, sleep, and GABA, which is main inhibitory substance in our brain, posterior hypothalamus, wakefulness, and histamine. And no wonder that antihistaminergic drugs like those that we take for allergies sometimes have side effect, which is sleepiness. And then in narcoleptic patients who fall asleep suddenly, for no reason, we have learned from them that there is a neuromodulator called hypocretin released from lateral hypothalamus that is also responsible for wakefulness. And finally, as far as process S, we have some molecule substances like adenosine that build up during the day, and they are responsible for sleep as well. And there is a way, actually, weapon how to fight this sleepiness by using caffeine, which is the antagonist for adenosine receptors, and this is way actually how coffee is waking us up. And now sleep and aging. Normal sleep is going through this kind of hypnogram curve. So in the first half of the night, we go through the stages to deep sleep. And then after about 1.5 hours, we finish up this first cycle by short, brief REM episode. And then we go to another cycle. And again, after another 1.5 hours, there is a completion of this cycle by another REM episode. And then third, fourth, maybe fifth cycle during the night. In the second half of the night, it is mainly REM stage and stage 2. And the illustration of those stages is written here. So, for example, REM stage is similar to wakefulness as far as EEG activity or our brain waves, but the body is paralyzed and we dream a lot. So, what happens to sleep over lifespan? When people get older, the sleep is lighter, there is less deep sleep. The latency, it takes longer to fall asleep, is being prolonged. Sleep is less efficient, there are more awakenings during the night, and the napping during the daytime is also more common. And there are some differences in sleep between men and women, but we are not going to talk much about this during this lecture. If you go across the species and you look at the top, there's a Batman up there sleeping for about 20 hours a day. Human is somewhere here, 1/3 of the time, about 8 hours. And then, for example, horses, they sleep only about 3 hours and mainly on their legs or being upward. But if you look only human from newborn age to elderly, then you can see actually how this time changes a lot. From about 16 or more hours when the baby is born to only about 5-6 hours in the late age in the elderly. And not only that total time spent in sleep, but also the composition of sleep is changing. So there is a greater proportion of REM sleep there. If you look at different areas, different stages, then you see that vaso or wake after sleep onset is being increased, REM is being decreased, as well as slow wave sleep, but superficial sleep is pretty much maintained over the life span. Another illustration is like this: newborns from adults, 65 plus, and you see this reduction of number of hours. Not only that, but sleep architecture is very much changed. In the younger individual, you see this hypnogram that looks like the one in the textbooks, but in the older age, you don't see that. The cycles are not quite clear, the deep stages are missing a lot, and there is a great number of awake episodes during the sleep. So if you're talking about the efficiency of sleep over time, it was almost up to 100% in the young age. In the elderly 65 plus, this number is definitely on the average below 80%. Not only that, but sleep deprivation or lack of sleep is leading us to different risks, to increase of different risks. Risk of cancer, risk of heart diseases, they go up heavily. And there is a less sleep, which is strongly linked to obesity and increased blood pressure. And especially during these pandemics, it is important to realize that weakening immune system is also linked to less sleep. And all those morbidities and the increase in the morbidities, of course, is linked to higher risk of death or mortality increased in the less sleep. Aging and sleep is linked to many, many different diseases of many different organs, from brain, ankles, or and then cancer, blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, respiration, incontinence, depression, whatever. So many heavy links, aging and sleep and those diseases. And the medication is taken much more if the individual is having trouble falling asleep for about 3+ nights per week in both regular users and occasional users. And then, as I said, the special attention in this talk is going to be put on the new guidelines in precision medicine, or the importance of sleep disorder breathing for our healthy aging, because it is strongly linked to cardiovascular diseases and diabetes mellitus type 2, and together they make the triangle of danger. So there is a strong bilateral connection between all those, three tips of this triangle. Obstructive sleep apnea is the most dominant sleep disorder breathing, and this is actually what is going on. The inhalation, exhalation, normal breathing during the night, stops, and then there is obstruction of the airways, and there is no airflow, but the muscles continue to build up the pressure for sleep, but the individual is not breathing until the airway opens. During this time, and especially afterwards, the blood oxygen drops down, and there is hypoxia that is occurring. So the individual, this is like 10 minutes of sleep, in that individual, is experiencing cessation of breathings, that lasts, in this case, for about 40 seconds. It could be somewhere from 20, 25, 40, even 60 seconds. And it happens all the time. In these 10 minutes, you see every minute, actually, this person was ceasing in their breathing. And then the oxygen in blood was dropping down quite significantly. This is more detailed, so you can see the hypoxia that is developing in this individual quite strongly. And what this leads to, actually, this leads to obesity, systemic inflammation, dyslipidemia, increased blood pressure, and hyperglycemia, because of hypoxia, sleep disruption, and sympathetic system activation. But it could be cured, it could be prevented by using CPAP or continuous positive airway pressure. This is a simple method used here in this case, where you see the mortality is rapidly going up, or the number of people surviving 3 to 4 years was quite low here. Only about 30%. If you use this device for curing those people, then you save these many lives. So the importance of treating the sleep disorders, especially sleep disorder breathing, was in the European action called Wake Up Bus that finished up in Brussels in the EU Parliament, where EU Parliament actually brought up the directive on the driving license. So now we realize that sleepiness behind the wheel is very important. And in Europe, you cannot really get driver's license if you have untreated sleep apnea. How easy it is to actually screen to realize that somebody is having this? Quite easy. We can use the screening tools such as stop or stop bank questionnaires. So the simple yes and no answers to questions like snoring. Do you snore? Do you feel tired during the day more than normal? Has anyone observed you stop breathing during your sleep? Or do you have elevated high blood pressure? Those are STOP for questions, and BANG is body mass index, age, neck, and gender. At risk are those who have 35 or more BMI, 50 age or more, neck circumference in female more than 40, in men more than 42, and gender male. And these are the numbers that are really frightening. Look at the number in these age groups, especially in the male population who have risk for sleep apnea. This risk is similar at the age of over 65 plus, but only at the numbers of 60 and some. So this means that about 50-60% are having, in the general population, are having risk for this. And this is something that is really important to realize, to perceive, and to understand. There are so many patients about us who have this risk and who's really important for healthy aging. There are numbers who show the validity of both questionnaires that are quite okay, so those questionnaires can actually be used in our population. So to conclude, the sleep medicine today is having about 80 different disorders, and among them, number 2 is sleep-related breathing disorders. And in the sleep lab and sleep medicine is dealing today mainly with those patients. Sleep medicine in Europe is developed quite a lot. We have the papers for accreditation of sleep medicine centers, for certification of sleep professionals, and we have papers on standard procedures in the accredited sleep medicine centers, and we have catalog of knowledge and skills. So just for illustration, the paper on the accreditation of sleep centers, certification of professionals, standard procedures for adults in accredited sleep medicine centers, where there was great importance of the German Society and the Croatian Society with the president of the ESRS, or European Sleep Research Society, who put those papers together. And we have developed catalog of knowledge and skills, and now we have sleep medicine textbook in Europe, and now we are working on the second revised edition of this book. And this is actually finishing up with the study programs, and I will conclude my talk with this. Croatia was the first country actually that developed the master's degree program fully in accordance to European guidelines, and this is done at the University of Split, but together for all medical schools in Croatia. And we developed many European grants to increase the public awareness and the awareness in the sleep, in the medicine population, actually, about the importance of sleep medicine. Unfortunately, this year, World Sleep Day was also under the COVID-19 pandemic's attack, so it was mainly done online. And my final line is going to be like getting a good night's sleep is very important, because lack of sleep or poor quality sleep increases our risk of health problems. And this is especially important for healthy aging. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And once again, greetings from Split, Croatia. Bye-bye.